Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. I'm Brother Ali. This is the Travelers Podcast, both for people that are listening on audio only or watching the podcast. You're going to notice it looks and sounds a little different. I'm on tour at the moment with The Grouch and Living Legends and Reverie and DJ Fresh. We're having a really good time. Go to brotherali.com. In the events section, you'll be able to get all of the information for those shows. We also have shows coming up with Grouch and Eli in Colorado around New Year's Eve. And then also on January 6th, I'm performing at the Rise Up concert series in Tampa, Florida with Atmosphere and RJD2 and Sa Rock and Soul Messiah. So that's going to be super dope. Right now, I'm in Las Vegas, and anybody that knows me, or if you listen to this podcast regularly, you might know that Las Vegas is one of my least favorite places on the spaceship that we call Earth. I've just had some really experiences here that I just don't like. I just don't feel good about this place. But I know that there are beautiful people that live here. I usually don't choose to perform here, but when I'm part of tours and when I'm opening for other people, and I'm not the one setting the schedule and the agenda, and they choose to be here, I always make my intention that, this is a place that Allah created, and there are people here that are beautiful people. So my intention is to visit those people and to be with those people. So this hotel room that I'm in, the light looks pink because of the fact that out this window behind me, there's actually a really beautiful mountain. And so I'm happy to see the mountain. That feels very like grounding to me. But it's kind of a nice hotel that the Grouch put us at, which is beautiful. And the tint on the window is pink. And I didn't notice that. It was nighttime when we came and checked in. And I just kept the windows closed 'cause I didn't want to see the strip and all that kind of stuff. But we got in and went to bed. And I woke up this morning. And as the sun was rising, I started noticing this pink kind of tint coming through. And so I opened up the windows and I saw that the window itself is tinted. So that's kind of fly. Um, we have a sale going on right now on the entire website on brotherali.com. I don't have a holiday this particular season, but I know that a lot of people do, and people are giving gifts. And it always makes me feel really good that people share my music with each other. That's the number one way that people find out about the podcast and find out about our music. And so the fact that people are giving gifts, we decided to do a discount. So if you go to brotherali.com, in the area where our store is, where the merch is, you'll see that almost everything there is on sale. Everything that we were able to discount, we are discounting. And there are some things there that are really rare and exclusive. The Uncle Sam goddamn jacket that says, "Welcome to the United Snakes, land of the thief, home of the slave," that's up there while they last. So you can check those things out. The guest today is somebody that I don't think I know, although we're definitely in the same circles and in the same community. His name is Son Mischell. And you'll hear, I'm about to interview him. I'm actually recording this before our interview. But I'm going to ask him to make sure I'm pronouncing his name properly. I believe it's Son Mischell. And I became aware of him because he's on Instagram and TikTok, and he's the person that says, "Peace." And then he'll describe something that's part of language. And he normally is pointing out inconsistencies in people policing other people's language. But he also has a lot of other beautiful messages. And he always ends by saying, "We out here." So he's the "we out here" dude. And I love his work so much. I follow him and we've traded DMs and things like that. And so I especially saw his support for Palestinians. And I also saw something where he had spoken about the Somali community and he used the term Somalian. And as somebody that comes from Minneapolis, that stuck out to me. I was like, oh, Somalis don't say Somalian. And it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't like, oh, that's offensive or anything like that, because so much of his platform is about not policing people and how they speak. So I was like, man, it just is what it is. But the point that he was making was a beautiful one. And then he came back a few days later and actually corrected himself. He said, to add the phrase "en" at the end of when you're talking about people that are from a place is linguistically correct, but that's not what our Somali family call themselves. And so he said, so I want to come back and correct myself. So I just thought that was really beautiful. And so I just invited him on the podcast because I want to ask him more about his work. My understanding is that he's a professor at Harvard who teaches the Gullah Geechee language and culture. I also know that he's done music in the past. He's a really amazing and gifted singer, MC, producer. He plays guitar. He can rhyme. It's like, do spoken word poetry, storytelling. Just a really, really beautiful, interesting person that I wanted to get to know better. So we asked him to come on. We're brought to you as always by the Zakat Foundation. Zakat is in the Islamic tradition is how we talk about charity, giving back, sharing, and actually, it's a way of purifying our income. We only want to be involved with things that we believe in, even financially, but it's not always possible. And so we brush up against things that we don't believe in. And we believe that one of the ways of purifying ourselves and our profit and our sustainability and our livelihood is by sharing and it's by giving to causes that we really do believe in. Zakat Foundation does really dope work all over the world. You should really go check them out. On social media, it's Zakat US, Zakatus. Their website is zakat.org. They do extremely dope work all over the world. They partner with people on the ground and they invest in this podcast. So that's really beautiful. Also, the podcast is brought to you by The Caravan. If you go to brotherali.com in the join section, you can see what's up with those beautiful people and get down with The Caravan. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with somebody whose name I think is pronounced Son Mischell. You want to breathe for a second? We don't have to jump. I know that was hectic,
Right,
man. I'm
right,
so
right,
sorry.
right. And I'm obsessive about like details. So I'm like, man, I wonder if I can get that Bluetooth popping again. But you know,
I know you are because you're always the audio and video of all of the stuff that you post is so beautiful. I've noticed when you were in the car that I'm like, oh, he's got an LED light in the car. Like, okay, go ahead. Man, I respect that so much, man.
right. I mean, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
That's right.
So that's my thing is making sure that I've always been like that, like presentation, man. Just making sure that people can see that you put in a little bit of extra effort to present to them. Sometimes that's all that makes all the difference in the world when you see somebody put forward a little bit of effort. Whether it works or not, the effort will be appreciated.
And then also the audio side, because your voice has so many like layers and textures, and the way that you have it
Right.
so that you can speak very softly, which is like a really beautiful effect a lot of the time. You know what I mean? Especially with the things that you're conveying. And I know that you're very thoughtful about it because you're such a beautiful presenter on so many different mediums. But
I appreciate that.
man, the way that you're able to say things that might be very challenging for certain people,
Right. Right.
you know what I mean? But with so much nuance and so much like calmness and tone, like tone is everything.
Right.
And the way that you're able to capture your own tone is really beautiful, man. I really respect it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I get a lot of the inspiration actually comes from like my dad,
Mm,
because he's I'm a preacher's kid, and his style of preaching is more like a little bit of hooping, but mostly teaching. But he's a charismatic dude. Like even as a little kid, I'd be like watching him just move through the crowd and church, shaking hands, and seeing people, older people, young people, everybody, kids in the neighborhood, be like, man, I wish your daddy was my daddy. You would have him because I'm a young hard head, like you would have, but his demeanor, even when you were in trouble at the house, his demeanor would be like, son, come here, let me talk to you for a second. You're like, man, it wasn't even like a just yelling and all of that. It was just making sure that you understood the seriousness or the significance of what he was saying. And a lot of times, too much emotions would get in the way of that.
mm.
And so I've found that throwing a pep rally and getting people excited and rah rah rah. And a lot of times it's a lot of heat but no light.
Hmm.
And so to me, depending on who I'm talking to, if I'm talking to you, if I'm talking to family, and brothers and sisters and like we all in this together,
Hmm.
what I'm yelling for? I don't need to do all that. We on the same, we're on the same page.
Right.
We all know the struggle. We all talking about the same thing, and I'm trying to give you some news you can use. So I want you to take what I'm saying to heart and mind, and not just hit the chord that's going to, spark the praise break. And we shouting up and down the aisles, but then when somebody asks, "What pastor preach about today?" I don't know, but it
Just,
was,
just like God, man, just.
but the Lord sure was using them today. We don't know what he said, but the Lord was using them. And I'm trying not to do that.
Mm,
Now there's a place for that.
mhm,
There's definitely a place for it. But I think that when you're in a position where it's really important for the information to get across. It's really important for you to hear what I'm saying and absorb what I'm saying. And also, I know you're going to replay it later in your head. Nobody hears a video or a song or anything and then just has no replay later on. Matter of fact, sometimes the best songs, the best bars are the ones that have replay value or rewind value that would make you. Of course, that's a cassette tape reference, but you want to rewind it and listen to it again because it hit you like that, and so you're going to rewind it later on when you absorb it later on because most social media content is consumed while you're doing something else,
mm,
usually at work. A lot of social media content is consumed at work. And so if it's consumed while you're doing something else, and this is the distraction, sometimes you're not even fully absorbing all of it because you making sure it ain't coming while you're supposed to be typing that report or whatever it is, you know.
mhm.
And so later on when you get a chance to really listen, like, hey, okay, all right, like I didn't catch that the first time. And then you give it a second to really let it sink in, they're gonna peel back the layers anyway.
Mhm.
And if when I peel back these layers, it wasn't nothing but cuss words and hollering and fist pumping, that's not gonna have shelf value.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even if you like spicy food, that's not the majority of what you eat on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
You might like ghost peppers or so, but you don't eat that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You don't eat like that.
That's an occasion.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And so when I have a choice between, okay, am I gonna give them some ghost peppers or maybe a little bit of bell pepper or a little,
Right. Right.
a
Right.
little throw a little jalapeno or something in there. Like, how many peppers y'all want with this? And so that's what I'm doing is I'm choosing. It's gonna be spicy now. Don't get me wrong. It's gonna be spicy. You gotta have a little bite to it,
Right.
but how much depends on the topic. And sometimes you really have to rely on the relationship you have between yourself and the audience. There are times when I really don't have to say anything, and I mean that quite literally.
Mhm.
Don't have to say anything. I just post the reaction or the response that I've gotten. I mean, and there's nothing I can do, but there's one particular post. All I could do was just laugh. Dude was saying something about I think it was Islamophobic. He, like, respect our country and speak English. Respect our country, speak English. But he spelled our Ourare. Now listen, I'm not a I'm not a literacy snob. Like that's the
That's
exact
the whole
opposite of
platform.
what
So
I
much of the platform is about not policing people's use of language, but
100%.
pointing out the inconsistencies and the hypocrisy in the policing.
The hypocrisy, the
Mhm.
hypocrisy, and there it is pointing out that you who are attempting to police speech don't even have a command of the speech that you're attempting to police. Come on, bro. Like that you did that. You did that to yourself. You
Mhm.
did this to yourself.
Mhm.
And so that to me is exactly the type of opportunity that I want to present you and the next person with, because it occurs to me, and this is the same thing that happened to me when I was a kid. All sound and fury, but not enough knowledge or wisdom to really go with it.
Mhm.
So all I could do is rebel. You feel me? So
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna act up. I just don't really know why. I can't quite put my finger on it. I just know I'm gonna act up in this class.
Right.
You know, and as it turns out, when you have teachers who say that the brutality of slavery was overstated, these are real paraphrases for what I've heard in class. The brutality of chattel slavery was overstated because they were property and the slavers valued their property. And you don't see people beating cows or abusing their bull or farm animals. And I said, well, first of all, yes, we do.
Mhm.
They literally lead them to the slaughter if need be. But secondly, are you comparing my ancestors to cattle?
Mhm.
And they were like, well, that's what chattel means, is that they are property. Now, this person didn't have the sensitivity to say, listen, by today's standards, or I understand how you feel, those people back then felt that way because they were racist. Like, give me some context. It was just like, no, your ancestors was cattle. And therefore, it wouldn't make logical sense to beat your brood mare, to beat your bull,
Mhm.
which we know they do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, which one is it? Is is the fact that our complexion lighter than it would than what we started out with, and that the large percentage of African Americans have Scots, Irish, and English, heritage.
Mhm.
We can come in with that.
Mhm.
So, are you saying that your ancestors were in mass into bestiality? Or are you saying that we were actually people in the first place and they were doing something that was evil
Mhm.
by stripping us of our humanity? Therefore, they knew in their own mind that they were not committing bestiality when they were raping us.
Right.
You, it's an unfavorable position no matter how you look at it. It's either bestiality or rape. Which one is it?
Right.
But
Yes.
the shame ain't on me.
That's right. Yes, sir. Yeah, man. And I thought about Beast of Burden Blues as
Ah,
you were speaking, and in looking back to, first of all, I was like, do we know each other? You know what I mean? Like, how there's people that are
right,
like,
right,
we're in the same circles.
right,
I know we have mutual friends. You know what I
right,
mean?
right, right,
So I'm like, but there are people that I just feel like I know. They're like,
right, right, right,
either
right,
we
right,
know
right,
each other or we know each
right,
other. You know what I
right, right,
mean?
right, right,
But
right,
once I started going back, I was like, man, some of this music, some of your music and your bars like sounded familiar to me. You know what I mean? As
right.
as I look back into the work that you were posting 15 years
Yeah.
ago, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I see the relationship with music and poetry and rhyming
Mm-hmm.
and storytelling. And then I found a story of you talking about being a preacher's kid and secular music being off limits,
Right,
but
right.
going and listening, sneaking and listening to it, and
Right, right,
almost this like obsession with it because it's the
right.
forbidden fruit thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, like, the ways that these non-written communication, like forms of communication, that are so rich with meaning and so rich with humanity. And there's something about music and these types of expression that there's almost like a human touch to them.
Right.
You're not being touched by somebody's hands,
Mm-hmm.
but like if you hear, it was just Jay-Z's birthday and I listened to the track where his mother is saying Sean Carter was born December 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And like you close your eyes and like even if you never saw her, like you see his mother,
Right.
you smell some type of cocoa butter or something like
Right,
that. You
right,
know like what this woman, you feel her.
right.
And so I just wonder if you could talk about, and then learning more when you were talking about your father
Right.
being a preacher, um, what those early kind of formative years were like for you. What were your inspirations?
Right.
What was it that gave you the spark of culture and language and what it says about and the ability to just communicate the human condition and truth and beauty through these
Right.
these forms?
You know, it's something that I don't recall not doing.
Mm.
You know how some people can say, "Oh, I discovered this thing when I first heard yada yada." I don't recall not being creative. It's all I've ever known.
Mm.
Um, I remember being this big, you know, in church, and they had these wooden chairs before they had the pews. It's a country dirt road, church down a dirt road, country church, and they had these slats in the seats of the chairs, and to me, they look like piano or organ keys, and I'd spread my legs wide, and I'd be playing on the keys of the chair, and you couldn't tell me I wasn't the one that was moving the crowd, that had everybody, every now and then my mom would be like, keep still, like, like, boy, but it was always there. If I would go and swing a water hose, and once I heard that woo woo sound, I go, oh wait, if I swing it faster, slower, like I can make a melody with it. If a rubber band popped and I heard that boing sound, a can dropped or something, hit, I just heard music all the time. If there was a leaky faucet, it made a beat. The wind, like I was just always surrounded by music and typography. I was into typography before I even knew anything
Mm,
about typography. I would
mm,
just like the way that letters looked together on billboard signs, and the types of font that they were, and how this one led into that one, and how they would use the fat ones to make this type of statement, and the skinny ones for that type. And as a little boy, I'm figuring out that they use this if it's fancy, and that if it's not. So even if I couldn't read the word, I knew that there was something significant in the font that they use, and the size of the letters. So there was always a constant sense of being like this little tiny satellite, absorbing the world, taking it all in, and my mind just never stopped. I just peppered my parents with questions. Anybody who would, I asked so many questions at some point in time, you could just tell, just like, oh, they'd see me coming, and like my big old head full of questions, you know. And even as a kid, I would ask for reference books
mm,
as gifts.
mm.
I'd like a dictionary or an almanac, a thesaurus. Um, People would be like, no, 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 for real, what do you want? That's what I want. Give me a dictionary, give me a
Can I
thesaurus.
get a dictionary with the etymology in it? Like, let me
Yes,
get the big
yes,
joint. Yeah.
yes, yes. I mean, that's the thing is intellectual curiosity
Mm,
will take you further than conventional education in many instances.
mhm,
Because what we know to be conventional education, we know it wasn't really created, the educational system was not created to edify the students.
mhm,
Now, I'm not against it, but let's keep it a buck. Okay? The reason we have public education and the reason that the students are on the schedule that they're on,
mhm,
the bell, the hours, the breaks, is they're being prepared for the workforce.
mhm.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Is many of these exercises that you will never use, these are things that are teaching you discipline, but that discipline not in the sense of honing a skill or a passion,
Mhm,
but discipline in the ability to regurgitate information that's been fed to you and keep with a curriculum, keep with compliance, and not to question it.
mhm,
Don't question the bell. Don't question the order. Walk on this side of the hall. These people are the ones in have authority. Listen, but do not speak unless spoken to or given permission to speak. These grades are going to be the thing that determine your worth. They are basically your paychecks. Whether that number is higher or lower is going to turn into dollars one day.
mm,
Whether higher or lower it is going to determine your sense of value. That rank and that classman is going to determine what benefits that you get. The seniors get senior cut day, the freshmen, not so much. And so it starts to prepare you for one out of two things. One being capitalism and the workforce, the other being the carceral system.
mhm,
So imagine that, though, a system that's perfectly preparing you for for two extremes. Either you're going to be used to this system when you get to jail
mhm,
because you've already been taught how to eat when you're told to eat, how to rest and nap when you're told to rest and nap, being graded on specific assignments, and punished on specific assignments. In many schools, you can still even be hit, literally physically beat in schools. And having that prepare you in school suspension for ISO. You even have a version of solitary confinement in schools.
Mhm.
It's all there.
Mhm.
It's all there. And that's exactly what you're going to end up with when you get into the workforce as well. And so I saw that early. I was a daydreamer. I might not be doing my classwork, but I'll have the dopest graffiti mural in my notebook by the time
Mhm.
by the time that bell rings. I will have 3 songs written in first period. My creativity, and to me, it was like I was smart enough to do what I needed to do to get through the day and fly under the radar.
Mhm.
But I was completely disinterested in conventional forms of I mean, let's keep it a buck. It's not so much education as much as it is indoctrination.
Right.
And we see
Programming.
that now.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? That used to be a controversial statement until they started banning books,
Mhm.
until they started referring to enslaved people as involuntary immigrants.
Mhm.
And now it's becoming so clear now
Mhm.
um, that the whole concept of free speech and like what's happening at the university right now,
Yeah.
where students who were exercising their free speech and right to protest, and this is tradition that dates back since the beginning of these institutions.
Yeah.
This is what they've always done.
Yes.
The Korean War, the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
the Iraq War, like this is what students do.
Yes.
They fight the power. And now many of them may not even be as liberal as they are in college. 10 years later, they might be a cushy job, but they have sown their wild oats in college to get the foundation for where they're going to be
Yes.
later on. But we're not we're in this dystopian sort of reality
Mhm.
now
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
they're not even pretending. We're not even pretending anymore. You have billionaires who are out here trying to, as Bob Marley said, kill them before they grow.
Right.
Where I'm looking at these people and see, you got to remember, my perspective is I'm on the campus.
Yes.
So I'm walking through the crowd. I hear the chants and I see how inter-ethnic, intercultural, interracial, how blended
Mhm.
the crowd really is. I see Jewish students among the Middle Eastern
Absolutely.
students, with the Black students, with the white students, with the
And there's
LGBTQI
some
plus
of the
students. Like,
most vocal, there's some of the most passionate, articulate, well-spoken about the subject. Like, I have to say that I keep very keen awareness of when white people speak out from within, because
mhm,
it's something that's very interesting to me.
right, right,
And it's not hard to keep track of because there's not a lot of it.
right,
But man, without question, the most articulate and the most natural, where it feels like these aren't talking points.
right,
You're not regurgitating something you learned on social media last
right,
night. There's an experiential, lived human truth
right,
when Jewish people speak, and they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
right,
You know what I'm saying?
right.
It's really beautiful to be
Exactly.
able to be like, hey, Zionists, you're not arguing with me. You're
Right,
arguing with the anti-Zionists in your own community,
right,
many of whom are survivors of the Holocaust
right,
or the descendants of survivors of the Holocaust. Like, I've not seen in a group of people who may be considered in certain circumstances white, uh, people who are that impassioned and articulate about speaking out.
right. But then you watch the news
Mhm.
and you watch these congressional hearings, and you hear them being compared to literal neo-Nazis.
You're
You hear
right.
them being compared to murderous hate groups that have actually taken lives at protests.
Yeah.
Like you hear the wildest thing, and I'm thinking, I know many of these people by name.
Yes.
Like I know
Okay.
who they are.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's not like I'm relying on a report. I see them doing what they're doing.
Mhm.
And to have it turn into this sort of surreal reality, alternate universe where someone just speaks it and makes it so,
Yeah.
and now you have a doxing truck riding around town with your face on it. Your information is being leaked for any extremists to come and do any type of harm they want to you. You are being stalked at your home. You're having mailers, and some of this stuff doesn't make the news. They actually had mailers sent to the homes in Cambridge with these people's faces and names on them, calling them anti-Semites. They have planes flying over, calling them anti-Semites. They're being intimidated. They're having jobs and everything cut off. And then when the groups of African American and other union workers say, well, we got your back.
Mm-hmm.
Since the Palestinian students, they really dropped the hammer on them from all sorts of shadowy forces from every direction.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know when it's going to be. You don't know if it's your professor. You don't know if it's your dean. You don't know if it's your president. You don't know who's going to be the next one to drop a hammer on you. All you know is you got an email, like Chuck D got a letter from the government,
Mm-hmm.
and it ain't good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm saying is, but what are they doing?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
What are they doing? They are literally saying, we don't agree with
Killing.
this particular thing, the
With this
killing, the
broad,
genocide.
yeah, with killing tens of thousands of human beings, half of whom are children, and we're funding this to the tune of billions of dollars when we don't have money
Right.
to do the basic things that we need.
And my first statement on it was, I'm here to defend freedom of speech for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
The Jewish kids, I don't even if they're Zionist students.
Mm.
If you're a student, if you're a Zionist, anti-Zionist student, if whoever you are, if you are a student,
Mm.
you should be able to express your point of view
Mm-hmm.
without outside forces. I don't care if they are alumni,
Mm.
without outside forces corrupting that process, because the students are talking to the students.
Yeah.
They have to go to school together. They have to go to class
Right,
together. They have
right,
to be on
right,
campus together.
right.
Back off for a
Yes,
second and
yes.
let them figure this, because they're the future. So they're the ones who are going to need to work it out. So let them have their differences. Now, of course, we're not talking about threats. We're not talking about people doing harm to one another. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
But but if you and I get into it, you go get your daddy. Now your pastor or your rabbi coming and jumping in, bro. What you jumping in for? Like, nobody even talking about you.
Right.
Like, these are students doing what students have always done.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to teach them to be fair-minded, to be open to critique and open to the idea of opposed views being able to coexist, and not that one side is just going to bully the other into having their way or whatever, well, then you got to model that.
Mm-hmm.
Model that for them.
Yes.
Show them that. But the thing is, there's never going to be enough capitulation.
Right.
Okay? You'll never be able to satisfy or reason with an unreasonable mind. When people only want their way
Yes.
or the highway,
Yes.
there's no way to compromise with that. So you might as well just do your thing.
And it yeah, man, yeah. I've learned this 100 times. I've had this experience, my whole life. And every time it's like, okay, I'm going to ask certain questions. I'm going to advocate for certain people that are dangerous questions or the wrong people to advocate, just to remember and
Right.
remind that these people are human. And obviously, I have a
Right.
connection to the Palestinians. Yeah, I've been a Muslim for 30 years. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
all of these other things. But like, man, every time it just really strikes me how I'm being nuanced because of the fact that I'm a loving, caring person. And I also believe in the
Right.
humanity of the people I disagree with. And I try to keep
Mm-hmm.
track of that. Try to keep track of the fact that, certain people do have memories of being targeted and are targeted now. Not by
Right.
Palestinians, not by LGBT, not by
Right.
black folks. You're being targeted by white supremacists. Like, let's be clear about it. When Jewish
Right.
people are unsafe, it's because of the Europeans. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? In
Right.
Europe and in America, it's Europe has a problem with Judaism. The Middle East doesn't have a problem with Judaism.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Especially not Middle
Right.
Eastern Jewish people. But man, it just never fails to like surprise me in a way that I shouldn't be surprised at this point.
Right.
How it
Right.
does not matter how nuanced your position is, doesn't matter how much you try to keep track of the humanity of people you disagree with. When
Right.
there's a supremacist attitude, or like not even an
Hmm.
attitude, but like when supremacy is the way of somebody's being in the
Right,
world, there is no level of nuance that's going to matter. You're either
right,
quiet or you agree with them. If
right,
you even
right,
make a face that's wrong, then like, man, you
right,
die too. You either your
right.
body's gonna die, your career is gonna die, your reputation is gonna die, your opportunity to get tenure is gonna die, your opportunity to play my festival or be distributed by my distribution company, you're dead. There's just no,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
What's interesting is I don't listen. I don't know. Maybe knock on wood or whatever. But with my following, I feel fortunate across platforms. It's about a million
Hmm.
across platform, all across platforms. But I have friends who have a million and some change on one platform alone. And there came a certain point where the algorithm just slammed on brakes.
Yeah.
I was getting tens of thousands of followers a day, a week, and just and next thing you know, everybody was like, "Yo, you're still on this app? I haven't seen you in weeks. Or I haven't seen you in months." Like people just came to a screeching halt, and it took me so long to get past a quarter mil that now I stopped counting. I stopped counting at a quarter mil. Then apps would change. I know a lot of people be like, a quarter mil. You complained about like, no, bro, trust me on this one. It's not so much the quantity
Hmm.
as much as it is the context
Hmm.
as to why you just all of a sudden had your platform yanked from the viewers when you had a series of bogus strikes that didn't make any sense. Even when each milestone I met with a suspension. I crossed the milestone while suspended. I couldn't even get on the app to celebrate it. And people would say, "Oh, well, we need to get our own app. We need to do this." And yeah. Trust me, I know. I heard all that. I know that. you know, so I got it. I got an
Like
account on those
you're not gonna explain Pan Africanist like economics to you. Yeah.
right. I'm there,
Hmm.
and so I'm fortunate in a sense that I think people get it. I think a lot more people get it
Hmm.
than what critics would like. Like they'll come in the comments and be like, "Hey guys, he's anti-Semitic. Get him!" And all my Jewish followers are like, "What's up with you? You're like, what's your deal, bro? Like that's definitely not what he said. like he, what? There was a moment when I was discussing white LGBTQ plus privilege.
Hmm.
People are like, "Oh, you can't put those in the same sentence." I'm like, "You 100% can."
Yes, you very
They're
the
like,
hell
"Oh,"
can.
it's like, "Oh,
Yes,
you
you
about to
have
know
to.
Chappelle?"
You need to.
They're like, "Oh, well, you saying the same thing that Chappelle did?" No,
No,
not exactly,
no.
not exactly. And also, he intentionally went about it in a way that he really didn't have to because he's very intelligent and could have done. You could have done jokes and you could have done it intelligently enough to do it George Carlin. Like you didn't need to do it that way, but you chose to do it that way.
Hmm.
And so we're not telling, we're not giving voice to black and brown LGBT plus plus people their frustrations
Hmm.
because there are a lot of things that are mainstream and people would think like the gay rights movement started with Harvey Milk,
Hmm.
and won't give credit to someone like Bayard Rustin. He just got a Netflix show
Hmm.
like just recently
Hmm.
for advancing in the movement. But I'm the type of person who will also say, okay, I see you buy it, but y'all ain't let the ladies really get the mic at the March on Washington. And, Rosa Parks spoke for like 18 seconds.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The mother of the civil rights movement can't get the mic. She spoke more at the Million Man March than she did at the Civil Rights March on Washington.
Which was supposed to be the most misogynistic thing ever in the history of America.
It's the intersectionality, man. Right now, as we speak, I'm listening to, I think his name is Bill Adler and a few other, critics or whatever, who are raking Dean Gay over the coals as unqualified, as uneducated. She's a fraud.
Hmm.
She's an
I'm not even
anti-Semite.
hip. Who's Dean Gay?
Harvard's president,
Aha.
President Gay.
Okay.
You know, and obviously, I'm not here for the misogyn war.
Right.
Here's the irony. The irony is many they're upset with her for not being hard enough
Mm.
on the protesters, and the protesters are trying to fight to stay at the school, like, against the things that she's done up to this point. So you have people on this side saying, "Whoa, relax, take it easy. We're not like that. Like, give us a break."
Okay.
And the standard is, no, you got to whip them harder, whip them harder, whip them harder. So the protesters feel like,
Hmm.
President Gay is already
Right.
being too hard on them, and the opposition, I suppose, is saying, no, you're not being hard enough.
Hmm.
So here's the irony: the protesters are giving pause, like, wait a minute,
This, they're seeing it.
we
They're
don't
peeping
like,
it.
right, right. They're like, hold up now, we don't like what she's doing to us, but we also don't like what they're doing to her.
Right.
And so imagine the crisis of conscience when you feel like you have to pause
Yes.
from
To
being
defend the
persecuted by
person.
the.
Yes, man. Yes.
That's integrity. That
Yes.
that shows you the integrity there. Put it this way: a lot of people, they can just let you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. They're gonna be like, hey, you chose that. That's on you, and they'll look the other way when they see somebody doing or saying something problematic. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend, sort of deal.
Mm-mm.
And in this case, the enemy of their enemy, per se, is not their friend, and they know that
Mm-hmm.
because they see the misogynoir and there are black women among them.
Mm-hmm.
So, in good conscience, they can't really feel comfortable not also saying something about the racism and the misogyny that's being directed at the person who's trying to silence them,
Yeah.
in their minds at least. They feel like they're being silenced by her. And so you end up with this weird sort of double back where they're like, okay, hold on, time out for a second. We know that you might probably end up, like, in order for you to stay in their good graces, you're going to have to sacrifice us, but we're going to defend you anyway, because right is right and wrong is wrong,
That's right.
and we're just people of integrity. So imagine that.
Thank you so much for listening. We're going to jump back in one moment, but I just want to take a second and say that I'm very grateful that you're here, because the podcast and the music that we release, the limited vinyl drops and the merchandise and the learning series, the events, the concerts, all the stuff that we do is completely independent. There's no record label, there's no distributor, there's no big corporation behind it. But I'm very grateful that we're able to make a living doing exactly what we want to do. It comes from our heart, and it's intended to go to your heart and nowhere else. And that's a really beautiful thing to be able to say, especially in this particular time. And I think you know that already, and I think you know this already, but my guess is that you also follow and listen to and support other artists and creatives and content people and speakers and thought leaders that are independent. And when that's the case, it's cool to follow us on social media, but it's actually not that cool to just follow us on social media. It's getting more and more corny. Increasingly, the things are changing in ways that I don't have time to get into right now. But it means that even if you follow us, and even if you tell the robots and the AI and the algorithm and whatever, even if you tell them you want to see the stuff we put out, a lot of the things that we post are just not going to reach your eyes, and you're not even going to know about what we're doing. The best way to connect with us is to go to brotherali.com. You'll immediately be prompted to sign our mailing list, and I don't like to sign mailing lists. I don't like giving people my email. But in this case, when you do it, I write those emails personally, and I only send them out when I've got things that I really want to share with you that I think you're interested in. I don't do it a lot. I will not blow up your email. So sign that mailing list. And then go to the shopping section. We got all of our merch there, podcast merch. There's Uncle Sam Goddamn anniversary stuff. There's Brother Minister stuff. When we do our limited cassettes and vinyl and all that all of that is there. You'll be able to see all of that. And if you go to the section called Join, we've got a caravan, which is our group of subscribers and supporters. And there's different ways to interact there. You get exclusive stuff. The top tier of those subscribers, we interact with them a lot. There's a Slack channel that's open at all times, and we communicate and build community. That middle tier, that's $25 a month, you get exclusive stuff. You get parts of these episodes that aren't released to everybody. You get music and things that I want to share on a regular basis. And then even that lower level, that $5 level, everybody that subscribe, you get these episodes early and without commercials and ads, and you know that you're supporting the work that we're doing here. So if you're digging any of the stuff that we do, head to brotherali.com, connect with us directly, and know that we love you beyond words. We appreciate you beyond words. I'm sorry, I'm having this moment that I have often because there's a lot of people that I'm like an admirer, a fan, a consumer of you know what I mean? And then I become friends with them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anybody from Chuck D to Cornell West or
Right.
whatever. And there's moments where where I'm just sitting there talking to my friend, and then I realize like, oh, that's right, you are Dave Chappelle. There's a moment where like Dave Chappelle will Dave Chappelle at you. You know what I mean? Or Yasin Bey or something like that. And I just had a moment like that where I'm like, oh no, this is not an Instagram video. I just had one of those moments. Sorry.
and I want to circle back to your original question because it ties in. Okay. When sometimes I have a hard time processing thank you. Because I almost feel like it's something that should just be. You see what I'm saying? Should just be. I'm a person who I appreciate the gratitude and all that, but I'm going to do it anyway. There are things about me, like I don't think that, especially in a like taking for example the Black community. Okay, there's a lot of conditioning from the oppressor that has seeped into things that we think are traditional, but they're really conditional. Our conditions are rooted in traditions are rooted in condition.
Okay.
And so there are lots of things that we might defend as part of who we are, like whooping kids,
whoopings and chitlins and
things. We take things that we were either forced to do or went through as means of survival, and said that because they did those things, we should continue to do those things. And one of the things being how hard we are sometimes on children. But there's a history to that. At one point, particularly in both plantation life and post-plantation life, post-slavery, if your child misbehaved, you would make a spectacle out of punishing them in hopes that your punishment would be severe enough to satisfy
to mitigate the mess, yes, or the police or the
right. So you go down to the precinct and you really give it to them so that the cops would know, oh, that one's taken care of. You go and whip them in the middle of the yard so that the overseer or that the plantation, the slaver will see that and be like, okay, he's got that one. We'll let that one slide. They got him. They got him. And so there's this phrase, "I'll whoop you so the white man won't," that makes it in our dialogue as it pertains to disciplining children, and we still don't connect the dots. My parents, as it pertained to discipline, were constantly evolving. And so this year's approach might be different from last year's approach, to the point where your younger siblings are like, man, y'all got it.
Like, I don't know who this lady is. This lady that just wanted to sit down and
Right.
talk to you about the wet towel on the bed. I don't know this woman. Yeah.
Right. Like, bro, y'all got it good. And so, but I saw that. And so it was a process of not holding on to some of those techniques and tactics, but they were modeling growth. So it allowed me to be able to let go of some of their shortcomings and bad choices, because they were modeling growth and evolution for me,
Wow.
and I was doing the same in the process. So it helped me heal. It's not the same thing as someone who's still defending it and holding
Right,
on to it in
right,
their
right.
old age and just nowhere to
Yeah.
go. They're gaslighting
Right.
you. There's nowhere to
Yes.
go. And the crowning moment of in my relationship with, my dad and
Mm.
I, one day we were working on a job and I was just talking and talking, and I talk a lot. And I come by it honestly. And he stopped and he said, in the middle of a conversation, we were talking about parenting and this, my views on this or whatever. And he said that he wishes his dad was more like me. So when your dad that you looks at you and says, like, I wish my son was my dad. Do you know how mind blowing that is? Like on a molecular level, how that just rearranged the DNA of my self perception. Like,
I'm
what?
still like I'm still yeah.
You know? And I said, well, Daddy, you understand that you're a big part of how I got here. So I want you to relish in the fruits of your labor as well. Like what you see in me, I hope you know that that's a reflection of what's in you and mama and my brother and my family. Like we're in this together. And there's nothing, a Grammy, a Nobel Peace Prize award, hitting the lotto. You can't give me nothing that I would trade that moment for. And in those moments, there was another moment with my mom when I was saying like, I hope y'all don't pass away before I get a chance to make it. To win a Grammy and have platinum albums and do all this other stuff or whatever. And my mom told me with the most calm, resolved, satisfied tone, "You gotta do all that. I could never be prouder of you than I am already. You you good. Give yourself a break. Like relax." Those things unburdened me so much that it made me hit the ground running and get it. It made me now with that off my back, that need to prove myself, that unwillingness to take, thank you, the inability to allow you to make me feel good with a compliment, because that empowered you to make me feel bad with a criticism.
Mhm.
And I had trust issues with giving people that kind of
Mhm.
power to influence how I
Mhm.
felt. So I would just brick it all
Mhm.
off. And so when people would say thank you, I would take it in a measured sort of, no thanks needed. No, you're good. No thanks needed. And so I try to keep everything like even. And so, one of my, um, idols was Dr. Spock. I like the fact that he was stronger than men and he could fight and he could do all this other stuff, but he just kept it cool. Everything was just cool. But he always had that inner struggle because it wasn't 100% Vulcan. So no matter how Vulcan he was, he always had that volatility underneath the Vulcan that he had to wrestle with. And I think that's what really made him who he was the struggle, not the process, but the struggle that he came to get to that
Mm.
point. And I identified a lot with that. And so that became the way that I presented myself, um, in most situations, because I know what it's like to not have discipline. I know what the lack of emotional, the ability to rein it in emotionally. Like I have seen things, I have been parts of things that people would never believe, things that a child should have never seen, child should have never experienced. I, ended up running away when I was 13, leaving home when I was 17, and doing me in a lot of ways that I shouldn't have, to get it, hit the ground running and survive and like make moves. And so sometimes it's kind of funny when I talk about something that's either street or hood or grimy, and they be like, "Oh, what you know about that?" Or, "Oh, you and your Harvard silver spoon," like, bro. And people who've been through it will never really like clap back and double down and try to show their stripes or whatever, because you know what it's like. I would never want to run the risk of meeting them where they are, turning into glorifying something that I'm glad to be away from. I wish there was a way, I wish society was more forgiving and more accepting and embracing of the misfit toys. The ones with the broken arm, the ones that have been bandaged together, the one that's been taped together, the one with the eye that keeps popping out, the toys that get tossed out, and being more, embracing them more, the so-called damaged goods, the people who have made the mistakes, the ones, it's like people will say they're an abolitionist, but for nonviolent
Right.
offenders. What?
Right.
You know, oh, I'm this, but only for that. Like there's a hierarchy
Mhm.
of who they're willing to abolish these systemic wrongs
Mhm.
for. No.
Mhm.
And see, that's the thing is when you've been
Mhm.
through these situations, I can tell you what my cousin's brains look like
Mm.
on the wall and on the
Mm.
floor and in a basin on a sponge in my mom's
Mm.
hand. I can tell you what that
Mm.
looks like.
Mm. Mm.
I can tell you how blood coagulates when it's out the body, the color that it is, the smell, the whole nine. What a bullet, how it will cook flesh and what that will smell like. The fact that you don't just wrap a bullet wound with a bandana and keep on fighting like they do in Rambo, like it will take an arm off. You know what I mean? I could tell you about the apathy of violence when somebody is doing something to someone and everybody knows it, but nobody does anything about it. You know what I mean? Being on the giving end and the receiving, being on the receiving end and then reciprocating, being on the giving end of violence as a form of liberation, as a form of finding yourself, protecting yourself, and then becoming the thing that you're running from, and having to run right into a mirror and realize where you've
Mhm.
arrived. Like it's a complex, messy process. And I I think it was a tweet once where I said, if most of the people who admire me now knew the road, the journey, the thing it took for me to get here, many of them wouldn't even mess with me. They would get so stuck on the path that it took to get here, the rough road, the life choices, the mistakes, the trial, the error, the you would get so, because that's where we are.
Right.
We're in this lynch mob prosecutorial
Yes.
mentality. That's where we
Yeah.
are. You know what I'm saying? If Jesus existed today as a man, they'd be like, yeah, ain't that the dude that whooped all those people in the synagogue that time? Yeah, ain't that the dude that did this? You know, ain't that the guy that brought all the wine at the party? You know, they're fine. Ain't he running with a couple of chicks that he ain't married to? He's sleeping under the same roof with Mary, right?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? You're going, this dude, washing dudes' feet and kissing them on the cheek. I mean, he might be
Mhm.
funny. So there's no saint through the history of time that can survive in today's element
Right.
unscathed.
Yes, absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? So, and recently Jamie Foxx got in a lot of hot water because people accused him of being anti-Semitic because he said they killed Jesus. What do you think they do to me, or whatever? And for some reason, people were like, "Oh, they who? You mean the Jews?" Like, no, that's an old black
Mhm.
phrase that's from the
That
church
that that means
that means
haters killed Jesus, not Jew. Yeah, it has nothing to do.
right,
Hateful people killed in that tradition who is the most beautiful human being that ever lived.
right.
Yeah, you can be the most beautiful, giving, loving human beings, and hateful people will accuse you of something and kill you for it.
That's the point. The whole point was you will never
Mhm.
be too perfect to be immune to
Yeah.
betrayal and hate. You will never be too magnificent, too wonderful.
I had a black elder tell me when I was a kid, Jesus only had 12 friends. So if you got one, be happy. He only had
Right,
12 buddies.
right,
Don't worry about life's not a popularity contest. If you have one friend, then you're rich.
right. And but it's like the way that we talk about these narratives where we're stuck on the betrayal of Judas, but nobody talks about the redemption of Judas,
Mm,
about Judas understanding in that moment that he had colossally messed up and betrayed a friend, and he was so bereft with grief.
mm,
He tried to give the money back. He couldn't find peace
mm.
in himself, and eventually he was like, "If Jesus is going to die, then so am I.
Wow.
I'll give my life for the mistake that I've made. I'll take my own life if it means that his life will be lost."
Wow.
That's how regretful Judas
I
was.
had no
And
idea.
there's the book of Judas. Judas has his own books, but that's not included in the works that ended up being the
Mhm,
Bible. It's not, it doesn't fit the narrative of how people want to view saints and sinners.
mhm,
You see what I'm saying? And so to me, I'm neither saint nor sinner. I don't subscribe to either one, but I understand how I would be perceived. Somebody asked me, said, it must be tricky being at Harvard right now at a time like this, like being pro-Palestinian.
I
And I'm
mean,
like, you know
Harvard
what?
has a very
I'm,
peculiar and specific reputation with lately
yeah,
with Dr. Cornel West, and I can't remember the man's name, but somebody came from a humanitarian organization and was going to write his book. He was going to write his thing within Harvard,
yeah.
and they rejected him, and they denied Dr. West tenure because of.
The thing is, Harvard ain't my daddy.
Mm,
Harvard ain't my
go
mama.
ahead.
Harvard can't take nothing
Yes,
from
sir.
me that hasn't either been taken away from me before or anything that's going to define me now.
Mhm,
And so at the end of the day, it's possible this could be a tipping point for the Palestinian plight. But if it ends up not being, and 10 years from now, 20 years from now, some new incarnation of this thing is happening, when I look back at what I was doing when thousands and thousands and thousands of people were being killed in mass, if I'm doing dances on TikTok, no shade at anybody else, I'm talking about me now. If I look back and I see myself just doing a whole bunch of dances and just selling my goods and just whatever, being oblivious to the world around me, at a time when, since George Floyd, okay, which Palestinians were in solidarity with us against police brutality, sending tangible information and tips and suggestions, things that we as activists can do
because
to
of the training of
survive.
the training of the IDF and the police in America.
Absolutely. But since George Floyd, don't you know that the amount of unarmed black people killed by police has gone up? Now, this is after the whole world paused
Hmm,
and protested
hmm,
and marched,
hmm.
and even they burnt police stations down and CVS's and
I'm from
did
South
all these
Minneapolis.
things.
Hmm,
Right. And it went up.
hmm,
So all they did was just ride out the storm and just quietly kept on killing.
hmm,
So this is something I've been doing since I was a child.
hmm.
I've been advocating for these for whether it's against apartheid, whether it's against in the Palestinian, whether we're talking about things that are happening in the Uyghurs and different people that have been subjected to if not genocide, crimes against humanity, because they got different rankings on what is going to. Well, that's not a crime, genocide. That's an atrocity, or that's a crime against humanity. And listen, man, y'all playing games
Hmm.
right now. There is absolutely an unconscionable event that is happening in our time, and I'm not going to look the other way as transgender women and men are killed at a disparate rate, and they don't count because, well, their gender or their sexuality ain't a black issue. I'm not going to look the other way when black women are, some of the most precarious times in their lives are when they're pregnant or in a relationship or
Mm,
both.
mm,
I want you to think about that now. When you're
mm,
in a
mm, mm,
relationship,
mhm,
they become more in danger by being in a relationship than if they were by themselves. And when they become pregnant, they're more in danger in that relationship because they're pregnant. And because they're pregnant, the pregnancy itself, the lack of prenatal care, the pregnancy itself, the lack of medical seriousness as it pertains to Black women's health,
Yeah.
and oh boy at home.
Yeah.
So it's a pick your poison existence for pregnant Black women.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm in a position, my place in the patriarchy gives me more of a platform than I deserve to speak over the people who need to be at the forefront. I'm gonna come through the door, step aside, and say, "Okay, here, you need to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Come on in. Go ahead. Y'all can have my spot."
Mm-hmm.
And talk to them, let them hear it, and then turn around and speak to the source, us. But I can't have that conversation in open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I need to talk to the guys who put their hands on women.
Mm-hmm.
I need to talk to the guys who's selling the dope. I need to talk to the people who's doing the dope.
Mm-hmm.
I need to talk to the thieves, the liars. I need to talk to the crooks. I need to talk to the people who've made the mistakes, who intend to make some more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't do that in an open space, because as soon as somebody says something, everybody descends on them, and we don't have the privacy or the space to be able to work it out.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? I
Yes.
need you to be able to be vulnerable in a safe space to work it out. And and I also, to be fair, can't expect people who have been on the receiving end of the types of behavior that we're trying to work through to simply sit there silently and not say anything when they're triggered by the
Yeah.
confessions.
Yep. 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 Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Or the process of getting to even acknowledgement.
Right,
You know what I mean? Because there's gaslighting and there's diversion and stuff.
right,
You know what I mean? There's a lot of that healing process that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
right. And so like ultimately, somebody might, if they pick up in this conversation in the middle and be like, whoa, wait a minute, what's the Gullah guy doing talking about what
Right.
is
We're
going
supposed to be
on in
out
this?
here. I thought we were going to hear about, dropping
Yeah.
the G's on the end of words and stuff.
Yeah, like what does he talk about? And that's why I choose social linguistics, because
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff
Absolutely.
meets at an intersection. How
Yes.
words influence society and society influence words, and we see that happen even with things such as like algo speak, where we decide, we are wise enough to know what to and what not to say, what will and won't get interviews or pieces in posts, either banned
Mm-hmm.
or flagged, and
Right.
so people started saying unalived, things
Unalived.
like that, and
And watermelons and
right, right, right. We'll find a way to express themselves, but sometimes in the middle of it all, there's a it is in do the no, but not do the right school days. When Lawrence Fishburne was like, wake up, wake up, wake up. You want to run through the streets yelling, wake up, but they done managed to sully woke. We gave him woke. We let him have woke. It conceded that Black Lives Matter. Maybe it is racist, after all. Just like they're saying from the river to the sea. Bro. Now you're saying that that's anti-Semitic. But the truth of the matter is, did you want me to say from the river to the designated spaces that you relegated behind that fence over there by that spot? Like, that's what we want to be free over there. And
minus
then,
the illegal settlements that have happened within
yeah,
those spaces. Like,
right, skip
because
over the settlements.
if you want to get more detailed, we can, but that's not
Right.
going to make you feel better.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
just like, and in the meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
we're out here putting a sugar glaze on from sea to shining sea, when that
Yes.
ain't nothing but manifest destiny.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm
Never
saying?
been
And
censured, by the way. Sea to
right.
shining sea is
And
a
so that
genocidal war chant.
people say, oh, well, if we're offended,
Mm-hmm.
and you have Black Lives Matter being said to be racist, anti-white, blah, 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
they're saying, well, just like you wouldn't allow somebody to tell you what is or isn't racist, then shouldn't we be able to say what is or isn't anti-Semitic? And I'm saying, okay, I think you're messing up that analogy in a way that you don't know, that you don't realize you are.
I almost never trust those analogies.
if what you're saying is that when we are fighting
Mhm.
against racism,
Mhm.
and because we are fighting against racism, we have to declare the value of our lives
Mhm.
in the face of our lives and humanity being devalued.
Mhm.
And the side that is devaluing and murdering us
Mhm.
says that it is racist because they are protecting their own interest and their right to kill us.
Mhm.
Okay?
Mhm.
Then we say that it is not racist in opposition to that thing. What you just did is you placed yourself in the shoes of the people who are killing us in that analogy.
Mhm.
Because you put yourself in the position of saying that a chant that is going against oppression, that is fighting against murder,
Mhm.
offends you.
Mhm.
So you see how you in your own analogy, you were the cops.
Mhm.
You were the pig in that analogy. You were the one who sat squarely in the mud next to the slop. You were the one who did that to yourself in your own analogy. You did that. You just
Yeah.
said to yourself, we are the America in that analogy that you're
Yes.
using.
Right. Which it's like there's something that happens inside of a person where you, in every situation, will either read it through the lens of the oppressed or the oppressor.
Right.
Like in every
Right.
situation, like if you know what oppression is and you identify with oppressed people, you will always see those analogies in that way. And like you're saying, like so many of these analogies that people make that are false, um, like you said, if you really bear them out, if you really try to weave through that web of lies and get to the kernel of truth, it's like, yeah, ultimately, some people will always see themselves in the position of oppressor.
Right.
That they'll always see that while claiming oppression.
Right. Right.
And every oppressor, you doctor, he's technically not a doctor by their standards, but Resma Minikim says, that the people were coming from Europe,
Right.
and in Europe they were oppressed. And he says everything that white bodies did to non-white bodies in America was done to them by people with land and money,
Right.
by other white people with land and money.
Right.
So they had this concept and this notion that like we need to escape this tyranny that we're experiencing, this oppression we're experiencing, and we're going to go to someplace else and create the land of milk and honey. We're going to create a place where all people are created equal and there's going to be rights and freedom and no taxation without representation. But there's people there already. So we just got to get rid of them,
Right.
and then we create our, you know what I mean?
Our Shangri-La. And but here's the thing though, is if you want to know about a nation,
Hmm.
check their heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Who are their heroes? Who are
Who are
the
your
people that
statues?
yeah, who? And when you think about it, Francis Marion is considered, a hero. And but to who? Francis Marion's a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
He's a domestic terrorist as far as the UK as far as England is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Swamp Fox is, they literally the nickname Swamp Fox. Okay. When you're talking about Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, all these other people, whatever, remember the Alamo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the Mexicans remember the Alamo very differently than the
Mm-hmm.
Americans do. And here you are as a black kid in school being taught, remember the Alamo, and the Americans being the heroes, but they never told you what they were fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
They never said they were fighting because
Mm-hmm.
Mexico was trying to stop your heroes from bringing slavery into their territory.
Mm-hmm.
So as it turns out, the Mexicans were the good guys after all. But since you're in America, going to an American school, you were taught to look up to the people who were fighting to keep you enslaved. And if that ain't a dastardly thing, I don't know what is.
When they accused Malcolm of hate, they said, "Who taught you to hate yourself?"
Right.
You know what I mean? Like who's teaching? Who's hateful here?
When you're thinking in terms of like heroes and
Mm-hmm.
these big platitudes that we, give me liberty or give me death.
Yeah.
Can give me some liberty don't hit the same as give me liberty or give me death.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some liberty and I'll be quiet.
Right.
That don't really sound like a mantra. That ain't nobody.
Give me Netflix and
Right,
give me a credit card
right,
and some Netflix and I'll mind my business.
right. You like give me some water, but you can still control the tap. What?
Mm,
Nobody's
mm,
gonna agree to that. And
mm,
so, if we're not talking about Martin Luther King talking about how he has a dream that one day in the segregated spaces over here in the black neighborhood with the underfunded schools that his kids can be safe on the streets,
Mhm.
but keep Jim Crow, just let us have a little bit more provisions over here. Like that ain't the dream that man dreamed, and that's not the dream that you try to capitalize on
Mhm.
and take advantage of. He
Mhm.
used clear and concise language that spoke about freedom and liberty throughout all of America. So when Palestinians talk about freedom and liberty throughout that entire region, the
Mhm.
ability to be able to go from the river to the sea unobstructed and be
Right.
seen as a human being throughout the
Yes.
entire region,
Yep.
you are so ensconced in the impression of these people that you believe that their freedom is a zero-sum game that calls for your eradication.
The Travelers Podcast is sponsored this week by BetterHelp online therapy platform. And when you use our link to sign up with them, which is betterhelp.com/travelers, you're going to get a discount on your first month of therapy. We're going to get a commission to help the work that we do here on the podcast. It really is a win-win for everybody. I'm a musician and I cannot stand to watch movies about music being made because it's just like, man, that's not how it works. And I want people to know how it works. My wife is a therapist and she can't stand to watch therapy in TV and movies because she's like, that's not how it happens. On TV and in movies, you see a person lay down on a couch, they cry to a stranger, and that person tells them all the secrets of their life and unlocks everything for them and tells them what to do and maybe gives them pills and things like that. There are a lot of approaches to therapy and there are a lot of ways that it's done. I don't think any of them are that. What therapy does look like in most cases is we start talking to people about the issues that are bringing us to therapy in the moment. So, addictions or relationship issues, or anxiety or depression, or thoughts that we're wrestling with. And firstly, they ask us questions that we couldn't have asked ourselves. And those questions are very revealing. Then they listen and repeat our answers back to us in ways that offer us a lot to learn a lot about ourselves. Now, mind you, they haven't told us anything yet. But as time goes on, they start drawing connections. And they just give us the opportunity to look at ourselves and our lives and the things that we're dealing with and the way that we've processed things, the way that we've stored information in ways that we haven't explored. Like, what's the idea that I have of myself based on this thing that happened? And maybe I didn't even realize that I translated it that way. And then what conclusions have I drawn about the world that may have served me in the moment, but may not be working as I go forward? So, therapy takes a lot of different forms. There are a lot of different approaches, but most great therapists are going to unlock different ways for us to see ourselves that are going to allow us to come to our own conclusions and to set our own goals. And I personally believe that we deserve access to therapy. I had a hard time accessing therapy. I heard about BetterHelp on a podcast and I gave it a shot. I've had two different therapists now, and I'm actively involved in weekly therapy sessions on BetterHelp. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers, betterhelp.com/travelers. Like I said, you get that discount. You start talking to them about what type of therapist you'd like to see, and then you make your own schedule with that therapist. You can start communicating with them right away. And at any time, if you feel like maybe this isn't the person for me, you change therapists, no questions asked, no extra charge. I'm recommending it. I have this partnership with them. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers and get down with this therapy journey.
I've had older generation people like who still watch cowboy movies
Mm,
and in the old school and had to explain to them like, you know, that's the bad guy, right? Like those. They live there.
So many black uncles love cowboy movies.
They love it. Like, and
Like
you have to keep explaining over and over. Like, wait a minute, what you mean? They live there. Like, he's the cowboy is the bad guy. Oh no, Gene Autry and Bat Masterson and all these. Like, listen, I don't eat Chuck Connors or whatever. No. Stop right there. I don't care. The Rifleman or whoever you want to come up with. Like, these people ain't the good guys. They're
Mhm.
not the good guys, okay? But they'll use just enough indigenous blood to make Walker Texas Ranger interesting.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? They always spice it up a little bit, um, but then you won't make the actual indigenous people the heroes.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? It should be Tonto and the Lone Ranger is the sidekick, if
Mhm.
anything at all.
Right.
But
'Cause
that's the
who's
thing,
guiding who through this
man. You
situation?
would you would be
Who
right.
who's actually providing the other one with the knowledge and the wisdom and the relationship with the land and people to be able to travel and live and survive and yeah,
Man,
absolutely.
the way that they spun the Thanksgiving story and the first dinner as how is the indigenous people your guest? We live
Right.
here.
Right.
What you mean? You inviting us over to cook the dinner, the food that we taught you how to catch? Like, you know what they were eating before what would have been and probably should be the actual Thanksgiving dinner based on what the pilgrims had been relegated to eating before they were helped? Each other. They had resorted to cannibalism. That's a fact, a proven fact, that they had resorted to cannibalism out of desperation in
Mm,
Jamestown. I might have been, like,
mm,
it might be off on an exact name. I can hit you with that later. But they had resort they found the corpse of a girl who
mm,
had hatchet marks that on her bones and her skulls that showed she had been butchered like meat for the meat. And these are the people that are being uplifted in these
mhm,
school plays as the
mhm.
heroes and heroines that came here with $1 and a dream. Like, no,
Mhm,
no. You they weren't your dinner guests. You
mhm.
were their dinner guests in their home. And
Um,
had it not been for them, you would have been one another's dinner.
and it's not that much different from giving from a white power structure giving a black person a Grammy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I
They're
mean?
they're
Like congratulations.
right.
Like here's my expert opinion on your culture.
The the list of people, no shade at anyone who's won one, because I know people who won personally, and I applaud the effort. No
Absolutely.
shade.
Right.
But the list of people who never got one
It's
versus the
crazy.
list of people, right? It's
It's one of the things Dr. Cornel West always says to me. So we have conversations and he'll be like, "Yeah, why don't you do this?" And I'll be like, "Doc, I don't have the money to do that. I'm not on the same level as like, you know what I mean? Like he'll be in
right,
conversations with Jay-Z or something and like, I don't have it like that. And he'll always
right,
say,
right.
"Oh no, though, brother, deep, resounding, truth-telling message, though, my brother. Absolutely." And he always says, "Well, never forget though,
uh,
brother. Never forget though, brother, that Curtis Mayfield never won a Grammy. Milli Vanilli got two."
oh man, you got him down. You got him down pat, bro. You definitely got him down pat. Yes, but he ain't
Absolutely.
never lied though. He ain't never lied.
Mm,
And so that's what I'm saying is after a certain point,
mhm,
you like example my friends and Ranky Tanky won 2 Grammys, but they're also educators. And I was we've known each other for years, and so at a time when I was working on music, they were also working. They were musicians, but they were also working in education.
mm,
And so what ended up happening is down the road, where we end up is in 2024, 2023, they've won a Grammy, and I'm at Harvard. It's like our dreams just went.
right. Yeah.
And but they're still educators and I'm still a musician, and so,
Mm,
we still have those things, but sometimes it's a beautiful thing when your dreams come true, but especially when dreams come true that you never dreamed.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? And that's what happened is dreams I never dreamed came true, and that lets me feel a lot more comfortable in my space, but I still am I humble? I'm still humble with it.
Mhm.
I wake up every day, and this is something that people may be surprised by. I wake up every day prepared to be and accepting and understanding that today could be the day I get canceled. Today could be the day. All it takes is one thing for certain demographics to wear off in my own thing. I've had people when I put the Black and Proud shirt out that was clearly showing love to Black LGBTQI plus people, and people like, oh, I was with you till you started talking about all the rainbow stuff or whatever. Boom, they fell off. Start talking about you know, domestic violence and issues, and they, oh, I was with you till you start pandering to the women. They fell off. If I say, well, race actually isn't really a prerequisite for who I would be willing to date or kick it with or do whatever, you got to remember I'm someone who doesn't really truly buy into the construct in a way that I would need to in
Mhm.
order to say I'm not going to be cool with Brother Ali because he's not black.
Mhm.
I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
But all it takes
Mhm.
is for certain me with a Chinese, a black, or Asian, anybody who ain't black, see me at a mall or at a movie. I knew it. He fake. He's a fraud.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? All it takes is
I mean,
is if I
Dr. West married a woman from, from Ethiopia, and then he married a South American woman. And I mean, in everybody's mind, like so many people are like, he's been married to 3 white women.
right,
And
right, and and that's the thing is you never know what it's going to be.
mhm. Yeah.
There are times I've had people who loved me until I
Yeah.
started talking about
Yes.
corporal punishment. And when I
Yeah.
started talking about corporal punishment,
Yeah.
now, they're blocking me and unfriending me.
Yeah.
And the thing is, whatever it's going to be,
Mhm.
it's going to be, I mean, I don't know what it's going to be that day because I don't platform everything. But whatever it is somewhere out there lying in wait for the people who are going to be triggered by it to say, yeah, nah, screw that guy.
And it's interesting because with so many people, and I think this is on the increase because of social media, it's really easy to get really entrenched in not only having an ideology, because a human being has an intellect, and that intellect is going to need
Right,
tools. It needs an intellectual and linguistic kind of an ideological home to live in. Like we've got our
right.
ideological because we have an intellect, and intellect needs that. Just like our bodies
Yeah,
need food, just like our hearts need love, just like our soul needs the divine. Uh,
right,
but being in these things is so easy to build the identity just solely around that. And but once we step out of that and start actually working together, organizing together, doing projects together, living together, it really has a
right,
beautiful way of smoothing out those ideological differences. And one
right,
of
right,
my like mentors, one of my main mentors in organizing, is always like he would sit there and let like people would talk about their ideological stuff, and he would always say, "I see you in the field, like see me in the field, like see me in the trenches." Because
right.
that's where we're going to really start to bear out like okay, how much of this has actually and because with these type of conversations, especially internal black conversations where I know that there
Hmm.
are people that hold different opinions, I'm always like, man, it's not for me to weigh in on those particular conversations.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right, right,
Because
right.
and especially even like I'm a human being, so human beings have an opinions. But it's like especially publicly, especially when I know that there are
Mm.
white people looking at me, it's like, man, it's
Right,
not for me to say, yeah, your side, or no, Dr. Omar's side, or you know what I'm
right,
saying?
right, 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 right,
But it's just
right,
like, man, because whatever a person who is experiencing a generational nightmare, a multi-generation nightmare does to
right,
try to make sense of like what is in the best interest, you know what I mean? Only the people that share
right,
those outcomes have the right to really have their opinion
right.
matter. You know what I'm saying?
And
But once you get in the
there's
trenches,
a thing
but the part that I can that I
yeah,
can on go on the record and be like, yes,
the work.
yeah. Once we get in the trenches and start, when we get to love and service, it's like, okay,
Right,
all right, so we disagree about this thing, and that might be understandable, but do we still love one another, and are we still in service of one another and the greater good? You know what I mean?
Right,
That's
right,
where I
right.
start to really like, hey, you're a, so like I'm friends with a lot of Islamic scholars, and it's like, okay, you guys see who is on the front lines of talking about Palestine, right? Because there's a lot of LGBTQIA plus non-binary, you know what I'm saying? Like really
Hmm.
being directly at the forefront of this. Like, okay, don't
Absolutely.
say anything about that community that you would not that you'd be okay saying about Sim Kern after what you just saw Sim Kern do and say and bear witness to. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right,
that
right,
tends to
right,
smooth a lot of this stuff out.
right. And I think that there's a thing where, especially with conversations with white people in public spaces, whether it's a host, an interviewer, or a colleague, a comrade, and when you're having conversations in mixed company, and social media
Hmm.
is a weird sort of animal where as a and I've found this particularly as a black person, you have to figure out how to talk to someone and everyone at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Because you're never just talking to someone.
Right.
You know what I mean? No matter how comfortable I get in this conversation with you,
Hmm.
I know that at some point in time, I mean, I have just one of my videos, as I said before, is over 14 million
Hmm.
views. And out of that 14 million, I don't know all 14 million of those people,
Hmm.
or how many ever million, is responsible for those views.
Hmm.
When a video gets 25,000,
Hmm.
50,000, 100,000 views, I don't know who the reach in all the profiles that those things are going to reach and how it's going to resonate with those people. And so the old off the record, thing, they ain't no off the record. When you're saying something, and this will happen a lot with my posts, people's like, why did you respond to that? Because I ain't talking to just them.
Right. Yes.
They're not the only one. That conversation ain't just a one-on-one
Hmm.
conversation. I will use the so-called clapback as a teachable moment for you to be able to get something from
Yeah.
it, because otherwise that's a lesson that would have gone down the drain. Or if I just DM'd them, they would have ignored it and you would have never heard
Hmm.
that. You see what I'm saying? And so that to me is why it's important that even though some of these ideas are liberal, lefty, lofty, kind of, tiptoeing through the tulip sort of hippy dippy ideas to a lot of people, I think you still got to voice them. You know what I'm saying? I know what they're going to say.
Right.
I know they ain't going to like it, but you still got to voice it. Somebody might catch it. Somebody might pick it up. Some little satellite like I used to be and still am,
Mm-hmm.
might say, oh, let me get that. Oh, okay. Let me process that and do something with it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. And and it's also important to really hear ideas that we don't necessarily share completely from a person that we believe and understand to be sincere. And like our
Right,
hearts are in alignment, even if the ways that we voice certain things aren't necessarily in alignment. You know what I
right,
mean? It's
right,
like
right,
that's at the end of the day, and that comes from working, living, and loving and serving. Like to me, I always bring it back to love and service. It's like, is there
right,
love
right,
there, and are we in service? Because those two things are tremendous equalizers, and they really smooth
right,
out a lot of wrinkles. My version of what you're
right.
saying of that is, like I said, that like I know. So if you and I are just having a conversation, because of how I was raised and the way that I see myself as me being a little kid. And me being a little kid is like, I'm not being raised on casserole. I'm being raised on collard greens. So there's a different relationship that I have inside myself. But then I also know
Yes,
the people that are looking at me and being like, I relate to that guy. You know what I mean? So it's like
right,
when I'm in certain
right, right,
conversations,
right,
and also that also I'm also trying to think about, for both me and you, there are people that are going to look in on this and read their and see it the way that they see it. You know what I mean?
right, right. But that's the thing is people will ask me. Well, sometimes they don't even ask. They just say like, "Why do you hate white people?" I'm like, "Why are you so impressed with yourself that you think you deserve to be hated by
Right.
me? Like, what makes you think that you've earned that much real estate in my head that I gotta
To
walk around
have an
hating you?"
opinion, or to yeah. To why yeah.
I'm like, bro, we dismantling white supremacy. We might, hegemony. We're taking apart systems and challenging conventional thinking that has proved itself toxic, to people or whatever. Like, if you think that this is all about you, think again because you've fallen into your own soup. at this point. And to me, a lot of the times, like, I don't think people know that my background is in work.
Mhm.
Like, I'm an advocate
Mhm.
and I do a
Mhm.
lot of
Mhm.
advocacy and speaking and talking and lecturing and everything, but I actually do boots on the ground offline. They're like, oh, why aren't you doing this? Or why aren't you talking about that? Like, okay, the thing that you're wanting me to talk about is something that I'm offline doing something about, because that issue calls for a different thing than just me talking about it. There's something else that is
Mhm.
required. And so that's what I'm doing. And I've just noticed that a lot of the critiques don't really come from activists, like people who do stuff. And don't get me wrong, doing is comes in different forms. Talking and advocating in social media things is doing. That's an action.
Yes.
Like being a journalist, all you do is write. That is doing something. But what I'm referring to is situations like when I'm we're providing food to the
Mhm.
community and someone says, why would you give that white boy a plate? Why would I? Because I'm in a video now, handing out food. Someone in the comments
Mhm.
wants to know why I gave a little white
Mhm.
boy at the
Mhm.
thing a box
Oh, food.
of
Mhm.
food. We ain't the same. I stopped for a while, like even showing some of the kids in some of my classes when I would do community stuff or whatever, because I work with kids of all colors, black, I do ESL work with students, English as a second
Mm.
language, and they come from all around the world. And there's always somebody in the comments, why is, where the black kids at? First of all, right there. Secondly, what you mean?
Mhm.
Who told you I only teach black kids? Shout out to Umar if that's what he's doing. Good, great, fantastic. I never said that was my mission. We different. Black people ain't the boss of me.
Mm.
White people ain't the boss of
Yeah.
me. Asian people ain't the boss of
I
me.
relate to that
Ain't nobody else
very
the boss.
deeply. Very
You know
deeply.
what I mean?
Like, yeah, I mean, always in my comment section, anytime there's even a conversation about race, you know what I'm saying? So in this movement of hip hop that a lot of people see me in, and it's one of the parts of hip hop I'm in, I was like brought on
Mhm.
tour by, on the one hand, like all the 5% very pro-black artists embraced me
Yeah,
like crazy. But
right.
but on the other side of things, with Atmosphere, with Aesop Rock, with so and so, it's like you're what we've always been waiting for. We pick you up over your head.
Right,
So
right.
and that world is interesting because on this podcast, I had a conversation with Slug from Atmosphere, and both Slug and
Hmm.
Ant are black, white, and native. And I've known a lot
Hmm.
of people of color, especially in South Minneapolis, where that's very common, that see them as people of color. Maybe they might see them as non-black people of color, but whereas a lot of white
Right.
people are like, no, they're white. So we just had a conversation with Slug about the fact that he grew up in the home of his black dad, and him and all his friends saw themselves as black, and then at some point he started realizing the world saw him as white. Just had a
Right.
conversation
Right.
about it. Man,
Right.
just the vitriol in that comment section. You know what I mean? Of
Right.
people who are like, man, I didn't come here for this. It's a very similar thing.
Right.
And people basically saying, like threatening, like, we're the ones that gave you your career. You know what I mean? You're alienating the people that come to your shows. Like all these people in your shows are. And it's like,
Hmm.
man, okay, that's one way of looking at it. Um,
Right.
but the reality is like, I actually don't work for you. Like you actually weren't
Right.
there.
Right.
You
Right.
weren't there. You
Right.
weren't
Right.
there. You
Right.
weren't there when I was going through the experience of and the work of
Right.
doing all of this. I actually don't work for you.
Right. You know what it is? It's what's funny is people when they say treat someone like family, you gotta be careful what you ask
Because
for.
there's family and then there's family.
Because I'm like,
You mean molest me and beat
I
me
would
with?
say that to yeah, and so I mean, it's like when you're in that comfortable
Hmm.
space, anything
Right.
goes. You know what I'm saying? It might be positive, it might be negative, it might be toxic, it might be healthy. That's family. Family comes with a whole lot, and I feel like, man, there were just times when we manifested
Hmm.
some internalized
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
sewage. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? We just spilled it all over one another, and from time to time, that
Hmm.
happens, and I still have to love us anyway.
I love me
I
some
listen,
ice.
I
Yeah.
absolutely like whole bodily, like man, I just we are just so dope
Hmm.
that I can't away
Hmm.
from something that's threatening to be malignant amongst us and eat away at us from the
Hmm.
inside. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? My relationships with many of the people that I champion now started out predatory, started out harmful. Like these are people who were doing damage to me. And I
Mm.
ultimately had to decide whether or not I was going to let those particular people who had done the thing win,
Mm.
because I was internalizing and
Mm.
externalizing
Hmm.
the thing, and I was beating them to the punch, sometimes literally beating them to the punch.
Hmm.
And in instances where you don't even know if there was a punch coming.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
there had to be a better me, there had to be another me, there had to be an evolution, there had to be a thing that would put me in a position to say, you know what, I ain't never gonna make it if I keep playing this game with black men, with black women, with people who have vices.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there was a period of time when, um, you hustle, you do your thing, and you develop like this idea about people, demographics of people where it doesn't have anything to do with race. Like you start looking at addiction as a weakness, as a moral
Yeah.
failing, and you look at these people as a dollar sign,
Yeah.
as food,
It's a type of
a means to
colonialism.
an end. Right. And you find out like, man, I'm really, on one. Like I'm really
Hmm. Hmm.
manifesting some pretty toxic
Hmm.
values
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
Like I'm really, there's that but for the grace of God, there go I thing where I'll see something, I'm like, man, that could have been
Yeah.
me. And even when people talk about like, judge not lest thou be judged, and they'll say, well, that means don't judge anyone. That's actually not what that scripture means. What it means is we all have judgment. We all exercise some degree of discernment and judgment. What it is saying is you should judge fairly. You should judge in a reciprocal manner by the same standard that you would want to be judged and the other person wants to be
Hmm.
judged. Find that balance
Right.
between the two
Right.
and make sure that when you cast judgment, it is in a righteous
The,
way, not a
the same
judgmental
way that
way.
we've all done things that we want and need and deserve grace for because we know the context.
Right,
So, you know what I
right.
mean? To give somebody the understanding of their context is to be human.
Right. And if after all that I've given and all that I've done and ask for and need nothing in return,
Hmm.
if at the end of the day my people should turn their backs on me for whatever reason they deem valid, I will walk away.
Hmm.
I will continue to do my journey. I will do my quiet chain cane, kung fu walked into the sunset, over the wavy horizon. I will do that and continue to be on my journey.
Hmm.
So when people start talking about canceling, and you ain't like me because of whatever your reason may be, I don't think you understand. I already died.
Yeah. Yeah.
I already did that. I already resurrected and come back from ashes. See, you're not gonna burn me. People always wonder. I wonder if you run out of gas if you get them talking long on a podcast.
No, sir.
No,
Man, I would love for
no.
us to just I would love for you to have a podcast or for us to have a podcast together. Just because,
Yeah,
yeah, and it's beautiful to hear you because you're so masterful and precise with those type of, on that platform. But man, I we're at 3.5 hours and I'm so grateful, man.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I just saw that. I was like, man,
it's
that's
deep when
what.
it's deep because this has happened to me a lot where there's certain people that I'm like, there's people that I like their music, I like their content, but then there's certain people that's like, no, I know this person, I love this person. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
there's
right,
a connection
right,
there that this content is just, it's almost like the breeze from the ocean. You know what I mean?
right, right.
So man, I'm really, really grateful to you and for you for for just giving us the chance to be able to witness and experience, you know what I mean, who you are, and just an idea for who you are, and for, you know, and for, I know you were saying that it can be difficult to receive, but I've learned a lot, man. I've learned a lot in the post, but then also in this conversation. And there are confirmations of things that we already know, but also there are definitely takeaways from this conversation that have been really, really helpful, that I'll be sitting with. And so I'm just really grateful to
Appreciate
you
it.
and for
Appreciate
you,
it.
man.
Appreciate it. I mean, I've received and reciprocated in the fullest, and I want to echo the sentiment that sometimes the vibe and the alignment is so familiar that it's like I don't know where, but yeah. I don't know if another timeline or maybe we met somewhere or
It's
ran into each
both are
other. Whatever.
possible. But the first time I saw you online, I
Yeah,
was like, oh, I know him. That's my friend.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And then
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
like, where though? Okay. And then I can probably think of
yeah,
people that we
yeah,
have in common, but I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it's really not
yeah. But
important. It's really not important. You have a brother here,
right,
and if there's ever anything that I can do to be of service, you already know.
absolutely, and likewise, I appreciate genuinely being able to just chop it up. I mean, I don't. I get invited to interviews and I do interviews and things like that, but every now and then, um, I recently had an interview, and I like the old pastor say, I ain't gonna hold you. But I did an interview not too long ago recently where they asked these questions that went into a direction that I think was deeper than what they expected in a way that they didn't expect. And so when it started to get a little bit too hood, when it started to get a little bit too, whoa, wait a minute, this ain't where we thought we were going. You could see a light sort of fizzle out
Mm,
in the eyes of the interviewer.
mm,
And sharing that vividly with someone who's just shrinking and falling away the more you talk about the thing that is not what they wanted from
mm.
you. And that moment is an experience that makes me appreciate conversations like this even more.
Oh man, that means the world to
It's
me.
because it's the difference. Instead of the light going out, you can see the light
Well, yeah, it
illuminating
was just like, oh,
and
we're cooking.
connecting.
Oh, we're okay. This is
Right,
like, this is full heart to heart. Like, all right, this is like the
right,
whole.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. I feel like we owe it to, especially if we on social media, if we do a lot of short
Mm,
snips and clips
hmm.
and people don't get a chance to really see more of you, I think, at least I personally feel like I owe more transparency and more openness and more accessibility when I have a chance to speak more at length instead of speaking in buzzwords and clips and quotes and anecdotes, like just being more conversational, um, utilizing that as an opportunity to model the type of vulnerability and transparency and accessibility that's going to be necessary for us to do this work.
Absolutely. Well, I hear it in your voice too. I wish I could make you tea. I wish if I was there, there'd be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Man, well, I appreciate you, man.
absolutely.
So much love, so much gratitude for Son Mischell for being so generous with his time and with his stories. I mean, he shares so much about his life and about his thinking and about his incredible work. And it's a really beautiful thing to have enjoyed somebody's work, watching them on social media, and then to actually get to sit down and just chop it up. It's one of the things that is really the real gifts of what I've been blessed to do, is that when there's somebody like that, that I'm like, "Oh, I love this person. I wish I could talk to that guy," over and over and over again. Allah brings me to those people, and so I'm really, really grateful. Make sure to follow him on social media, and if you do follow and you look at the main page where the profile is, you can see the links to buy the merch, all type of really beautiful stuff and really incredible stuff. Very, very grateful. Make sure to go to brotherali.com. In the event section, you can see all the shows that we have coming up, and you can also buy tickets for those shows. In the merchandise section, You'll see where you can get down on some of these discounts that we have for people that are buying gifts for each other and right about now. And you can buy yourself gifts too. There's nothing wrong with that. It's no less of a gift if you give it to yourself. And also make sure to check out the join section because the caravan is where we expand on these conversations. We spoke with Sun for almost 3.5 hours. And I don't probably what you're listening. My guess is that once Brendan does his magic, it'll probably not be 3.5 hours once you hear it. And so there will very likely be stuff there that just to serve the overall listening experience will probably end up as being bonus content in the caravan. But that's one of the many things that we do there. Shout out to all of our sponsors. Really, it's just two of them. The Zakat Foundation and also BetterHelp, BetterHelp. You can go and get down on the therapy journey. Yeah, this is just another great conversation of being able to really connect and to really talk through these different things that we're experiencing on this journey of life, trying to be people of integrity who leave a mark. As Dr. Cornel West says on my album, Morning in America, want to be a person of integrity who leaves a mark on the world. You don't want to just be well adjusted to injustice and well adapted to indifference. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was just in Sacramento yesterday, and so I was thinking a lot about Dr. West and his beloved mother. If you haven't heard, the first episode of this podcast was with the great Dr. Cornel West, who's running for president, and it would make me very happy if he were elected president. In any case, we love you. We appreciate you. We hope to see and hear from you next week. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, interact, save, all of that good stuff. We appreciate you. We love you. We greet you with the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.